through the House. I commend this bill to the House. Kia ora tātou.
Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. He mihi nui ki te Waitaha, iwi katoa tēnā koutou. I rise with great humility to speak on something so painful, so historic and so important to the rohi from which these people come. And just to explain perhaps to them, the reason that I as a Pākehā stand here is because as this Te Treaty spokesperson from a Pākehā perspective, what I heard this morning and what I've heard continually is that it is not just about Māori, it is about the treaty. And Te Treaty o Waitangi, the biggest responsibility the Greens believe is on the kāwanatanga, which covers Pākehā. And if we are to stand with honour and justice in this country, we have to acknowledge our part not only in history, but also in any future settlements. How well this is done affects us, our honour as a people as well. So I am very pleased to acknowledge this ancient iwi from a beautiful rohi. Not long ago, 3 days ago, I was in that area, and these mountains to the sea, which is a critical korero in that area, are a beautiful area, hugely developed because it's fertile, because it's rich, because there are wonderful streams running out of the beautiful forested hills. And that is why, in the past, all of this took place. It wasn't just dastardly deeds without a context. It was dastardly deeds because they wanted the land. They wanted the land, and Waitaha were in the way. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that the tangata whenua did not go through this process, this scorched earth destruction of their culture, both through the law and through the gun, because there were just bad individuals who were greedy. It was about a systemic colonisation that has taken away very mana and rangatiratanga of those times, of those people, and that now we are trying to rebuild in some form. And I'd just like to acknowledge the people who drive this are the people of Waitaha, and we as a country have reasonable to be grateful for them, because if we can learn their story, then we are going to be better able to live up to our responsibilities under Te Treaty. So I read with great interest, I would love to be on the select committee, but I read with great interest some of the historic stories of this area and of what took place. And it is really, really important that we all acknowledge Hakaraia Mahika and acknowledge that even today, freedom fighters are called insurgents, and as he was called, and that the people who fought with him and himself were defined as rebels for standing up for their fundamental right to defend their rohi, their fundamental right to their self-determination, and to fight for their very survival at a time when the Crown was hell-bent on getting this rich and fertile land and handing it over to the settlers. And so what we saw was a series of events leading to a massive raupatu in Tauranga. And as the Minister said, none of it can ever be put back together as it was. If you look at that area, it's incredibly developed now on the plains. But the hills and the rivers are still there. And as someone from Waitaha said to me recently, it's about a renaissance of a people from the rivers, from the mountains, down to the sea. So irrespective of everything that's taken place, this is a great day to begin a renaissance for those people. As others have said, the story of Hakaraia Mahika needs to be told, and it's really great to see the resources being applied to that through the deed of settlement and the bill. Obviously, this story needs to be understood by everyone, particularly, I would say, my culture in the Bay of Plenty, because we have not been renowned in that area for a recognition of tangata whenua, let alone a recognition of our treaty responsibilities. And so we have a duty to learn that story, and I think this resource will help everybody realise the mana of Hakaraia Mahika and others involved in standing up for what is right, for not being those ethnically cleansed insurgents, as in modern parlance, for not being rebels, but for being the people of the place with a right to stand. And it was very powerful to read that Hakaraia died at Waiweka wrapped in the kingitanga flag that was gifted to him by Tāwhio, and that he was standing with Te Kooti, who had also been vilified, and his descendants were also vilified, and his descendants, through some of the treaty settlements, again have asserted their mana and the rangatiratanga of their tūpuna. So there is another name that must be known by all, and that's where the settlement makes a very useful contribution to that. It's also interesting to note the role of, as well as the role of the gun, which was liberally used against the people, the role of the Native Land Court, as others have said. It was the icing on the cake, and it was, again, not some kind of random accident of law whereby the Crown thought they were doing the right thing but made a few mistakes. The Native Land Court was a deliberate strategy to create individualised title, because in the face of the strength of the collective cultures of tangata whenua, there had to be a way to get that land and to break those collectives. And if you read some of the dialogue of the day, they talk about Māori as communists, this dreadful collectivity that had to be broken. And the real driving force again was, how do we get the land? And if these people stand together collectively in their ownership and refuse to sell it, and if we can't kill them all, then we're going to have to find another mechanism. And so that mechanism was the Māori Land Court. And that land court in this area was very successful at individualising title, which is the beginning of the destruction of unity alongside all the violence that was used. It's really important to see in this bill the apology and also the resources committed to places like Hei Marae, Hei being a very significant tūpuna in the area and a very significant part of the Waitaha story. Also the recognition of the awa, because those beautiful streams that come out of those mountains are vital to the well-being of the communities. And in fact, the peoples in the area, Pākehā and Māori, rely on those streams for water and the integrity of those streams. And it's very important that the tangata whenua who have mana and acknowledgement have acknowledgement of their statutory responsibility and rights over those streams so that they are not further polluted in any way. It is great to see that the conservation authorities will have to have recognition of the values of Waitaha. A framework was described to me by somebody from there as a framework for renaissance and an assertion of the vision of integrity, cultural, environmental, from the mountains to the sea. And so let us hope that everybody who is in authority in the local government and national government recognises that framework of values will benefit all of us. It's a framework of values that not only will uphold the future of the descendants of Hakarai, but will also uphold the well-being and the environmental integrity and the cultural richness of the Bay of Plenty. So there is much in this, not only for the people, but also for the rest of us to acknowledge. I mean, it saddens me that the land is gone, so much of the land, there's so little to give back. But at the same time, the cultural redress is very significant. The educational endowment is very positive. The historical research will be excellent. I also note interesting issues around the protocols, which I agree must never be forgotten, around taonga tuturu, and around things like minerals. I recently met some Waitaha people at a meeting around Muir's Reef where they're proposing to mine, and where the Waitaha people asserted very strongly that they have a critical relationship in this area, and that anyone wanting to mine needs to talk to them and acknowledge that they have another vision of the integrity of their place, the integrity of water, and that relationship between the mountains and the sea. So I commend the Waitaha people for their work, recognising this as a stepping stone and a renaissance, hearing from people in the area that they acknowledge both Michael Cullen and Chris Finnison for their sustained work on this issue, because this huge loss can only be partially restored if we all remember and if we all learn those stories. And I would commend Alistair Rees's thesis talking about Pākehā ignorance, because if we don't admit it, we can't learn. We have to admit what we don't know. We have to take on these challenges. And this settlement, with its resources committing to cultural redress, must be adopted and embraced by us, so that forgetting, which is a Pākehā cultural habit, forgetting will not be allowed in this rohe. Waitaha tūturu, I wish, Mr Speaker, I wish them all the best in their process of this bill through the House. Kia ora tātou.
Honourable Tau.